Hey guys, tonight we're slipping into embroidered slippers and heading straight into the bustling, golden guts of a Byzantine emperor's palace. You'll feel the soft swish of imported silks, the cool marble under your bare feet, and the warm sting of incense that's just a little too much before breakfast. There's a harpist already strumming somewhere, probably before even brushing her teeth, and you can hear drowsy servants starting to argue about sponge baths and chamber pot duty. This isn't a place for lounging around unless, of course, you wear a crown the size of a soup bowl and insist on being fed pickled dates with ivory chopsticks. Now, you probably won't survive this because let's be honest, one false step, and you're on crocodile feeding duty or worse, assigned to fold the imperial underwear with a eunuch who hates your face. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And hey, post your city and local time in the comments. I love knowing where and when we're unwinding together. Now, dim the lights. Maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You stir before the sun's fully breached the horizon, roused, not by a rooster, but by the relentless clang of a brass handbell 3 corridors over. It echoes off marble, whips past pillars, and shatters your dream of honeyed buns and a nap under fig trees. Time to get moving. As you pull yourself from your stiff straw mattress more sacked in bed, you realize you've slept in your tunic again. Not that anyone will care. Half the palace servants do the same, since the day begins faster than anyone's ready. Your room is a narrow closet tucked somewhere between the silver storerooms and the cistern. You brush a fly off your forehead, swing your legs over the side, and let your toes touch cold mosaic. Today's theme, geometric suns and stylized dolphins. Yesterday it was lions. The scent of rosewater seeps in through the hallway. The perfumers have already started. You pass under a low arch, ducking instinctively, and emerge into one of the countless inner courtyards. The eastern sky is still a washed-out blue, but already the domes catch slivers of gold. You pause, just for a second, watching the sunlight slide down the Hagia Sophia's silhouette like melted butter. You're not supposed to stand around, but you do anyway. A kitchen boy barrels past with a basket of figs. He glares at you like you're the one who spilled honey yesterday. You ignore him. You've got 10 minutes to report to your assigned quarter of the Blachernay Palace, the northwest wing today, where the imperial family occasionally sleeps when they're not in the mood for the seaside view in the balcony, and every hallway feels like a gallery. Even when your job's basically glorified janitor, there are peacocks embroidered in the drapes, silk banners showing saints and lions, and windows framed in ivory. You pass an oil lamp still flickering from last night and blow it out. Someone mutters behind the tapestry, probably Gregorio's again, the spindly candle boy who hoards raisins in his sleeves. You don't ask. The closer you get to the imperial chambers, the more absurd things become. Wall mosaics shift from pretty impressive to this probably took 10 years. And for artists to make, the marble underfoot changes color to green vein from Thessaly, deep purple porphyry from Egypt, and something with gold flecks that looks illegal to walk on. And yes, you still have to mop it at a corner junction. A bearded eunuch raises one perfectly waxed eyebrow at you. You nod back and keep walking. He doesn't stop you, which is nice, because that one has a habit of giving lectures about hallway speed limits. No, really, historians still argue whether eunuchs at court were more dangerous with their gossip or wit. It's their absolute monopoly on palace protocol. You reach your designated service post and slip into your linen apron just as the second bell rings. That one's deeper, meant to signal the transition from waking chaos to formal morning duties. In other words, you're on the clock. The chambermaid hands you a scroll. It's the day's rota, written in careful Greek calligraphy by a monk who probably hates his job more than you do. You scan it quickly. No latrine duty, a small win. Instead, you're assigned to assist with air circulation. Yes, that's a real job. It involves fanning particular rooms with great big ostrich feather contraptions to make sure His Majesty doesn't sweat while digesting figs. You've done worse. As you walk toward the imperial quarters, you pass through the triclinos, the reception hall, which at this hour is oddly peaceful. Yesterday, it held a visiting ambassador and a performance involving trained parrots. Today, it smells faintly of crushed lavender and something vaguely metallic. You think you see blood on one of the carpets, but then realize it's spilled wine. You hope. A low whistle from behind you. It's Petros, another servant, balancing a bundle of folded towels on his head. You're on feather duty. He snorts. Don't sneeze. The last guy sneezed and got demoted to pigeon coop detail. You roll your eyes but tuck that advice away. By the time you reach the corridor leading to the emperor's private vestibule, everything slows down. The lamps here burn finer oil. There are guards silent, armored, expressionless, and you straighten up, adjust your sleeves, and focus. Because just beyond those doors lies the center of the world, the emperor, the Basilius, the man whose slippers are inlaid with pearls and whose moods can topple cities. You don't enter not yet. You and the other attendants are waiting for the call. You'll have to fan the air during the morning dress ritual, which, incidentally, takes over an hour and includes more perfume than a modern department store. But that's a problem for the next section. For now, you glance out one narrow window. The sun has fully risen, gilding the entire city like a blessing. You hear seagulls, distant bells, and someone singing in the servants' courtyard below. A new day in the Byzantine palace has begun. Before you've had even a whiff of breakfast, or a moment to shake the sleep from your eyes, the real performance begins. Not on a stage, but in the emperor's private dressing chamber, where the stakes are higher than a circus tightrope. Act over a pit of starving lions, and you're now an active participant in the Byzantine morning theater. No one is getting his imperial majesty dressed. The call comes sharp and sudden, a servant with cheeks flushed from running gestures, briskly for you to enter. You slip inside the dim chamber, which is anything but humble. The walls shimmer, with silk tapestries embroidered in crimson thread. On one end stands a gold leaf table, displaying a ridiculous array of scent bottles, jars of crushed pearls, and, for some reason, a single orange. Historians still argue whether it was for decoration, deodorizing, or emergency vitamin C. The emperor isn't visible yet. His screen made of cedar wood and inlaid with ivory lions is still drawn. But the preparation has begun. You take your position by the corner, feather fan poised and ready, while half a dozen other attendants buzz around in organized panic. One man arranges a pair of boots so shiny they reflect the candlelight like polished obsidian. Another carefully unwraps a tunic dyed Tyrian purple, a color so regulated commoners could be executed for wearing it. Yep. One misstep in the laundry rotation, you could literally die from color. Theory, a eunuch clears his throat theatrically. We will begin with the underlayer. His tone implies this is a sacred rite and not just getting a grown man into a linen undershirt. You nod solemnly, resisting the urge to scratch your nose with the feather fan. The emperor emerges from behind the screen. He is older than you expected, with a tired but shrewd face. You've heard rumors, everyone has, that he poisoned his brother, that he sleeps on a bed of silver coins to absorb their virtue, that he once excommunicated a bishop for sneezing. You don't know what's true. You just know your hands are shaking, and you'd rather not trip over your own feet today. The dressing begins. First, the undershirt. It's linen, sheer and soft, pressed with rose oil. Then the outer tunic, stitched with patterns representing divine favor, gold threads forming abstract crosses and griffins. A belt follows, decorated with semi-precious stones. But wait, there's a problem. The belt is missing. Suddenly, all heads snap toward the wardrobe boy. His face drains to ghost white. He stammers. It was there this morning, I swear. The emperor exhales through his nose. Not a word, just a sigh. But the room goes still as stone. One of the eunuchs steps forward. Voice icy, find it. Now, you stay absolutely still, because this is how careers end, or disappear, or turn into unpaid assignments scrubbing mosaic tiles in the hippodrome with vinegar. The boy runs, nearly tripping over a chamber pot. As silence stretches, the emperor lifts his arms and glares sideways. We are all delayed over a belt. You quickly step forward, wafting the fan gently to your left. The air stirs, carrying the scent of clove oil and a faint whiff of roasted almonds from the nearby courtyard. The emperor doesn't look at you, but you feel his shoulders unclench slightly. Small victories. After 5 tortuous minutes, the boy returns, belt in hand, hair disheveled, face slick with sweat. It had slipped behind the laundry screen. My lord. The emperor narrows his eyes, but says nothing. The belt is fastened. With care. Next comes the chlamys, a flowing mantle, fastened at the shoulder with a brooch shaped like a roaring lion. The moment it's draped, everyone in the room shifts their posture, because now he doesn't just look like a man. He looks like a living icon. And that's the whole point. Byzantine ceremonial dressing isn't about modesty or comfort. It's pageantry. Every layer reinforces the divine authority of the emperor, God's regent on earth. A walking, talking, occasionally burping symbol of holy continuity. According to at least one 11th century chronicler, this process took up to 2 hours on feast days, which is just wild because most of us barely spend that long getting ready for a wedding. You note a French detail as he moves tiny stitched stars along the hem of the chlamys, each one slightly different. Why? No one knows. Aesthetic flair? Secret symbols? Historians still argue whether it represented constellations or individual saints or just a very patient embroiderer with artistic anxiety. Finally, the scent ritual. A small burner is brought forth, on which crushed herbs, myrrh, cinnamon bark, and a smidge of frankincense are dropped. Smoke wafts in elegant spirals. The emperor leans into it, eyes closed, face now fully composed. Your fan slows. You feel the energy in the room settle. Then, without warning, he turns to the mirror. A full-length silver glass panel, one of the few in the city, imported from Venice at great cost. He inspects himself, raises one eyebrow. Acceptable, he says, then walks out. Just like that, everyone exhales. You lower your fan arm, which is numb now. One of the chambermaids drops to the floor in silent relief. The eunuch smirks. You didn't sneeze. Good. Outside the chamber, you finally get a chance to stretch. A nearby kitchen runner hands you a date wrapped in a fig leaf. Payment, he says with a wink. For surviving Fashion Week. You bite it gratefully. The date is sweet, the leaf bitter. Your legs already ache, but the morning's only just begun. And your next stop, the palace kitchens, where you'll try not to get burned, bossed around, or poisoned by accident. Again, the corridor smells like rosemary, wood smoke, and someone's burned attempt at breakfast. You know where you're headed, the palace kitchens, and your stomach's already growling. Like a hippodrome lion, a shame, really, because you won't be eating anytime soon. You're on duty, and the kitchens of a Byzantine emperor are less like a room and more like a siege in progress. You slip through a side passage near the service wing, dodging the guards who are laughing at something in Armenian. Then, the moment you push open the bronze-inlaid double doors, bam, you're hit with a wall of noise and heat. Voices shout, metal clangs, fires crackle. A cook is already berating someone in Greek, Latin, and a third language you think might be swearing in Cappadocian. You're nearly flattened by a scullion carrying a tray of raw peacock legs. Not a joke. The Byzantines didn't believe in simple menus. They believed in statements. If a goose wasn't available, a swan would do. If it wasn't visually stunning, it wasn't worth roasting. The emperor's breakfast today includes boiled eggs, fried honey cakes, cucumbers, olives, and yes, pickled flamingo. It's a delicacy or a punishment. Depends on the marinade. You're giving your assignment quickly, chopping herbs and stirring. Traganos, a kind of thick, doughy porridge often flavored with crushed almonds and date syrup. Easy enough until the lead cook called Megas Megaros, or the big chef, strides in and announces the emperor's morning tastes have shifted. No, vinegar today, he growls, eyes scanning the room like a hawk that's recently divorced and taking it out on the mice. He wants something delicate. You whisper to yourself, delicate like pickled flamingo, and immediately regret it. The assistant next to you snorts, but you both pretend it didn't happen. You're handed a bundle of fresh mint, a ceramic pestle, and instructions to make a refreshing herbal syrup without offending the emperor's stomach. The Virgin Mary, or the memory of Constantine. No pressure. As you work, the kitchen reveals itself not as chaos, but as organized. Chaos? There's a rhythm to the madness. Ovens burn constantly, massive brick things large enough to roast an entire wild boar. One section is entirely dedicated to bread. Byzantine bread wasn't just white and fluffy. There were dark rye loaves, honey-glazed braids, and even saffron buns served during court feasts. And everywhere you turn, someone's yelling. The fishmonger is arguing over a half-stale sturgeon. The fruit boy is defending the shape of a pear. A steward is sweating profusely over the appearance of the dessert platter. Historians still argue whether Byzantine chefs were trained more like artists or soldiers, and in this moment, you see how it might be both. One of the stranger tasks today involves crushing a powder made of dried violets. Why? For a scented sauce. Apparently, this emperor has a taste for floral notes, delicate, ephemeral, and almost definitely stolen from Persian recipes passed along the Silk Road. The cook beside you mutters. He likes to pretend he's a garden. You nod like that makes perfect sense. A sudden clatter behind you. One of the junior bakers has dropped a tray of loaves. Bread rolls bounce like fat little rocks across the tile floor. A moment of silence, then laughter. The megasmageros. Stairs, daggers, clean it, start again. The boy sighs and starts scooping bread into a basket like fallen soldiers. And then there's the spice shelf, locked behind a gate, like it's holy royal treasure, which, in a way, it is. Cinnamon, cloves, nutmeg, black pepper, all imported, expensive, and tracked more carefully than the palace silver. The kitchen steward keeps the key on a cord around his neck. He's rumored to sleep with it under his tongue. That might be an exaggeration, probably, but not everything is exotic. Lentils simmer gently in a side pot. Olive oil glistens in terracotta jugs. Chickpeas are mashed into garlic-thick spreads. These humble foods are still part of the imperial diet, especially during fasting days, which number over 100 in the Orthodox calendar. And on those days, flamingo's out. Boiled cabbage isn't. The cooks do not celebrate. You take a moment, just one, to rest against the cool wall near the oven's edge. Your syrup turned out well. Someone even complimented it, which is rarer than sleep around here. But you're not done yet. The emperor's breakfast must be plated with care and carried to the upper veranda, where he eats in semi-private splendor. You won't be delivering it, that's reserved for more senior staff, but you will be arranging the tray. Silver platters, gold spoons, glass cups blown in Antioch. It's all so luxurious it feels like you're dressing a meal for marriage. You sprinkle rose petals between the plates and wipe a smudge from the fruit bowl, like your life depends on it. Because honestly, it might dot as you finish. The baker returns with a tray of fresh bread. He winks and slips you a small roll before anyone sees. You tear into it when no one's watching. Warm steam puffing into the air like a miniature miracle. Then, a sharp clang of bell outside. Not a fire bell, not the hourly signal. This is the bell, signaling the emperor has taken his seat. The tray is lifted. The silence that follows is reverent, like watching a relic pass by. You exhale. Your part in breakfast is done, but don't get too comfortable. You're expected to help prepare the ceremonial walk next, which means lining up with dozens of other staff to rehearse the sacred shuffle down the Hall of Holy Steps. And watch out for the peacock. You barely get 5 minutes to breathe before you're whisked from the kitchens and nudged into the hallway outside the Hall of the August Presence. A palace page scurries by, clapping his hands and shouting, "Ceremonial walk rehearsal, all. Attendance to position," and someone move the peacock. Ah yes, the peacock. But we'll get to him in a minute. Right now, you're headed toward the Chrysotriclinos, the famed golden audience hall, not for a feast or audience, but to prep the most over-the-top hallway stroll known to mankind, the imperial procession. It's not just walk from point A to B, no. In Byzantium, a walk could be an act of divine theater. Every shuffle, every flutter of cape, every echo of sandal on marble, it's all part of reinforcing the idea that the emperor is God's earthly mirror. So naturally, your job is to make that mirror shine without tripping over it. You join your group of fellow attendants, all lined up with stiff backs and sour expressions. In a side hall near a double row of bronze columns, you're assigned second-tier cloak guide, which sounds more impressive than it is. What it actually means. You help lift the hem of the emperor's over-decorated outer garment so it doesn't touch the floor. You'll walk for steps behind and slightly to the left, matching his pace exactly. If you step too slow, you'll trip the protospathrios in front of you, too fast, and you might brush the emperor's elbow. Either mistake, instant emotion, or worse, latrine patrol again. One of the eunuchs, who smells faintly of sandalwood and judgment, clicks his tongue and orders you all into formation. Drape bearers, gold torch holders, sandal guards into line. Torch holders, yes, even in daylight. The imperial hallway must shimmer with light. The Byzantines love their symbolism, and torches indoors represent divine fire and guidance. Historians still argue whether some torch bearers were chosen for height, beauty, or just the quality of their cheekbones. At the far end of the corridor, servants polish the floor with beeswax-smeared cloths. You try not to slip. One boy did last week and skidded headfirst into a brass planer. He's fine. Mostly as you wait. A flash of feather zips by your ankles. Yep, he is the palace peacock, named Basilius Jr. by the Empress herself. The bird roams freely and is, technically, a holy symbol of immortality. But in practice, he's an aggressive, judgmental menace who has pecked at no less than 3 heralds and once chased a priest across the courtyard. Today, he eyes your sandal straps with intent. You glare back. Not today, bird. He cocks his head, unimpressed. Trumpet sounds once. Time to rehearse. The large bronze doors open with ceremonial groans, and the hall of the august presence stretches out before you. It's vast. It's gold. It's blinding. The mosaic ceiling sparkles with glass tesserae, shaped into stars, others forming angels with implausibly large eyes. Candlelight flickers against polished walls, making everything shimmer as if reality itself is slipping. The emperor isn't here yet, but that doesn't matter. This is practice. The actual walk happens later. For now, the court functionaries bark orders, making you run through the steps over and over again. 3 paces, pause, 1 bow, cloak tilt, torch flare on cue. You bow at the right time, lift the cloak corner exactly as taught, then step back into formation. You almost feel proud, until a clumsy scribe behind you knocks over a censer stand. It clangs against the mosaic and leaves a smoky smear. Everyone winces. The eunuch overseeing the practice hisses through his teeth. Again, you begin once more, this time with more muscle memory. You've done worse. At least you're not the guy who has to sing the Kantakian while keeping pace with a 3-beat procession rhythm. He's sweating bullets and only halfway through the first verse. Another fact, the Byzantines were obsessed with liturgy. Even the emperor's hallway stroll is accompanied by hymnody, scripted and sent sways, and sometimes even mechanical birds. Yes, real automata chirping from the rafters. You haven't seen one yet, but someone swears the brass sparrow in the Western Alps blinked last Tuesday. Your legs ache. The hem of the imperial robe is heavier than you expected, thick with embroidery and lined in some velvet-like material that clings to everything. By your 3rd rehearsal loop, your hands are red and your calves are screaming. But hey, you haven't dropped it or tripped yet, so maybe the Virgin's watching over you. At one point, you get a moment's pause and wander toward the edge of the hall. There's a tapestry there you hadn't noticed before depicting the emperor receiving tribute from foreign envoys. You squint. One of the foreigners is wearing trousers that look suspiciously like modern sweatpants, probably just a trick of the stitching, or a very bored artist. Suddenly, the room shifts again, this time with real movement. The emperor arrives, burly, in full regalia, with a look that says, "Don't mess this up. The real walk is happening now." The trumpet blares twice. Everything you rehearsed. Time to do it for real. You fall into step. 1, 2, 3, pause, cloak tilt, bow, torch flickers. Hymn begins behind you. The emperor glides forward like he's floating on divine steam. You keep perfect pace. Your breath is shallow. Sweat rolls down your neck. The only sound is sandals brushing polished stone, the low hum of the hymn, and the soft flutter of cloaks. Your heartbeat pounds in your ears. One misstep would echo forever. And then you're through. The emperor exits into the next chamber, and the torchbearers lower their arms. You did it. No stumbles. No peacock incidents. No visible perspiration on the emperor's tunic. A steward leans in. Good. You're on floor scrubbing duty next. You blink. But he shrugs. A tray of pomegranate juice spilled in the chrysotrachlinos, and guess who's closest? Of course. You sigh, adjust your aching arms and head, off to find a sponge, a rag, and whatever's left of your dignity. You're kneeling on imported marble, elbow deep in sticky pomegranate juice, scrubbing like your afterlife depends on it, because let's be honest, it might. No one ever got promoted in the Byzantine palace by saying, "I'm too dignified to clean up fruit goo." Especially not in the chrysotrachlinos, the golden heart of the palace and arguably the most overachieving room in all of Constantinople. The ceiling above you glitters with tesserae so small they look like someone glued stars to a dome. Saints stare down at you from the walls, their Byzantine halos slightly judgmental, as if to say, "That's what you get for sighing during the ceremonial walk." You wring out your cloth and start on another sticky red patch. It's not the juice's fault it was carried into early, before the emperor's post-walk refreshment. Classic new boy mistake. The tray wobbled. The goblet tipped. Cue catastrophe. Still, scrubbing the chrysotrachlinos does come with a perk, prime access to palace gossip. Across the marble floor, the senior maids are whispering behind a column. You can't help but eavesdrop. Something about a missing sapphire ring, a dispute over who gets to supervise the empress's bath, and, most intriguingly, a rumor that the emperor's niece has taken a liking to one of the Arab translators. Bold, possibly fatal. Another servant, a slender young man with very clean sandals, joins your scrubbing detail and gives you a tight-lipped nod. New here. You nod. He gestures toward the far side of the hall. Watch out for that section. One of the tiles is loose. Last week it swallowed a brush handle and the buttons. You blink. The floor swallowed them. He shrugs. Or, the building did. You'll learn not to question things. You scrub quietly for a few moments more, marveling at how the room seems both divine and completely absurd. Above your head, a mosaic of Christ's Pantocrator glows with impossible light. But directly beneath it, a rat scurries across a crack in the wall, dragging what looks like a dried fig. The glory of Byzantine squeaking along like it owns the place. Halfway through polishing the last of the juice spill, you're summoned again, this time to sweep a hallway before an imperial relative walks through. Apparently, her slippers are allergic to dust. You groan, wipe your hands on your apron, and head out. The corridor's empty at first, but as you sweep soft bristles against stone, you hear snippets of conversation echoing off the arches. He's planning a visit to the Augustine. Not since the plague. Do you think it's wise? She wept through the liturgy. The icon had tears again. Everyone pretends not to gossip, but this place runs on rumors. More reliable than the official scrolls. Quicker, too. You pass a group of stable boys clustered around a laundry maid and catch just one whispered phrase. The Afano knows. She always knows. You don't know who she is. You hope you never find out. On your way back toward the Chrysotriclinos, you pass through one of the lesser-used vestibules. A crumbling fresco catches your eye, an old emperor surrounded by lions and angels, wearing what looks like a ridiculous amount of jewelry. You pause. It's kind of beautiful, and also kind of weird that nobody's bothered to restore it. Dust coats the edges, and one angel's face is flaking off entirely, the past literally peeling. A passing eunuch notices your gaze and says dryly, "Don't look too long. You might end up assigned to icon maintenance, and the tools are worse than the job." You laugh just once, then realize he isn't joking. Back in the main hall, you're sent to polish the carved golden panels on the emperor's throne days. This is delicate work. One scratch, and you'll be scrubbing latrines with a toothbrush made from goat hair. The throne itself sits slightly elevated, framed by silk drapery. It's not just a chair. It's a performance. The design includes mechanical elements, hidden gears that, when triggered, can raise the seat, release a puff of incense, or even cause lion statues to growl. You've never seen them work yet, but the thought alone is enough to make you nervous. Historians still argue whether these mechanisms were functional wonders or ceremonial props. That rarely moved. Your hands tremble a little as you dust around the throne's legs. You try not to look at the carved lion heads too long. One of them might blink, probably just in your head. Near the dais, a chamberlain speaks softly with a young palace tutor. They're debating philosophy, Stoics versus Neoplatonists. You can't follow most of it, but you do catch one gem. Clean floors are proof of a just empire. You smile despite yourself, wonder if you should embroider that on your next apron. By the time your scrubbing duty wraps up, you're sweaty, sore, and mildly smelling of vinegar. A small bell chimes, signaling the beginning of the midday preparations, which means the scriptorium will be bustling soon. And guess who's been reassigned there? You. Apparently, someone in the scroll keeping. We mistook your name for a different apprentice with nice handwriting. Joke's on them. Your Greek cursive looks like a chicken with vertigo. Still, you grab your satchel and head down the hallway. One last glance at the shining floor reminds you of your triumph. No one slipped. No one cursed. No new enemies made. That's a win in the Byzantine palace, even if your next stop includes quills, inkpots, and at least one parchment panic attack. The scriptorium is tucked into a quieter wing of the palace, a place where footsteps soften, voices drop, and scrolls hold more power than swords. You're still sweating from your mosaic scrubbing adventure, but there's no time to change. You wipe your forehead with your sleeve and push open the door to one of the most important rooms in the empire. Immediately, you're hit with the thick scent of ink and old parchment, mixed with beeswax and unfortunately stewed turnips. Somewhere nearby, someone's lunch has gone rogue. You try not to gag. Inside, the room is strangely beautiful. Low-arched ceilings keep it dim and cool. Shelves wrap around the space like a scroll in motion, packed with documents in Greek, Latin, Syriac, even a few in Coptic. Candles burn low and steady in wall sconces, and sitting at an impossibly long table are monks, scribes, and a suspiciously smug eunuch with impossibly clean fingernails and a feathered pen longer than your forearm. You stand there awkwardly until a tall, thin librarian approaches. His robes are neatly pressed, his eyebrows Less so. You're the assistant, he asks, squinting at your apron, still damp from earlier. I sort of. Good. We have a situation. He thrusts a stack of papyrus sheets at you. The parchment shipment was due yesterday. It hasn't arrived. One of the catalog scrolls has vanished, and the ink ratio is off. Fix it. You blink. Fix what? All of it. Great. You set to work trying to make sense of the chaos. The missing scroll? A theological treatise written by some long-dead patriarch known mostly for debating whether angels had belly buttons, a critical piece, apparently, since the emperor planned to quote it in a speech, and now it's vanished. You ask around carefully. One monk grumbles that he saw it yesterday. A young assistant swears he never touched it, and the smug eunuch, he raises a single eyebrow and says, perhaps the scroll no longer wishes to be found. Not helpful. Meanwhile, you're asked to grind more ink, a surprisingly delicate process. The recipe calls for oak galls, iron salts, and a splash of wine. Yes, wine for flow, also possibly for morale. You stir it with a carved ivory rod while reciting your next prayer of the day. Please don't let this stain anything imperial. Behind you, the scribes argue over a verb tense in a letter from a Persian diplomat. It's not going well. You translated swift like fire, but he wrote swift like horse. You fool. No, he meant fire. It's metaphor. You inch away, inkpot in hand, over by the window. A sleepy copyist is trying to duplicate a gospel manuscript. His handwriting is flawless, almost eerily so, but you notice his eyelids drooping. As you get closer, you realize he's copied one line 4 times in a row. You gently tap the table. He jolts up, smudges the ink, and groans. Outside the scriptorium, the distant chant of a liturgy floats through the windows. Somewhere beyond the walls, the empire hums forward, markets bustling, soldiers drilling, priests preaching, but in here, it's just paper, pen, and panic. You're still not sure what happened to the missing scroll, so you do the only thing you can. Retrace the librarian steps from yesterday. You poke into the locked cabinet, peer behind the parchment press, and even check under the desk of the monk who smells like onions. No luck. Then, just as you're about to give up, you hear a thump behind one of the tapestry-hung walls. You gently peel back the cloth, and yes, there it is, stuffed behind a bust of St. John Chrysostom. Why? You don't know. Who? Even murkier. But you gently remove the scroll, dust it off, and hold it like treasure. When you return it to the librarian, he glances at it, shrugs, and mutters, thought it might be there, then walks off. You want to scream, or nap, or both, but the eunuch approaches now, waving a scrap of parchment. Ah, perfect. We need a clean copy of this imperial decree. Try not to blot. He hands you a stylus and points to a writing desk. You've never copied anything formally in your life, but apparently your elbows make you qualified. You sit, adjust your posture, and try to make your handwriting look like you didn't just spend half the day fanning robes and scrubbing floors. The decree is dry, something about reaffirming the toll regulations on Armenian trade routes. You copy the looping letters carefully, pausing every few words to blow gently on the ink. One splotch could doom the whole thing. You're halfway through when a blot does fall right between tolls and compliance. You freeze. The ink pool gleams up at you like a tiny black eye. The eunuch peers over your shoulder, says, MM, and scribbles a mark over it so quickly you barely see his hand move. It's now an abbreviation. He says smugly, you're welcome. You will never understand this, man. The rest of the decree goes smoothly. You finish it just in time to hear the scriptorium bell ring twice, a signal that the parchment shipment has finally arrived. You step out into the hallway just as porters unload a stack of papyrus rolls bundled in linen and sealed with wax. You catch a whiff of the dessert still clinging to the edges, Egyptian sun and camel sweat. These pages have traveled farther than you ever will. And with that, you're dismissed from the scriptorium, just like that. No applause, no thanks, no scroll-shaped medal of honor, just a pointed nod from the librarian and a muttered, try not to come back unless asked. You mutter something under your breath that's probably sacrilegious, and as you make your way down the corridor, stretching cramped fingers, a familiar figure intercepts you, the eunuch who runs the palace laundry. Detail, change of plans, he says, already walking. We've got blood on a silk robe, fish guts on the crimson towels, and no one's refilled the soapstone. You're coming with me, you sigh. You are hoping for a nap. But laundry day waits for no one, especially not in a palace where everyone insists on white linen. red silk, and spontaneous nosebleeds. By now, your legs feel like boiled reeds, your arms like half-stirred porridge, and your mood, well, it's somewhere between mildly defeated and quietly rebellious. But off you go, tailing the laundry eunuch down a flight of polished stairs. Toward the palace's southern wing, the air grows warmer, heavier, and slightly more suspiciously damp. The Byzantine laundry quarters are far from glamorous. Tucked near the palace cisterns and bath complex, this underground network of steaming chambers and echoing water pipes is a hot, echo-prone haven of suds, sweat, and scandal, which is fitting, since this is where some of the palace's juiciest secrets tend to bubble up, often along with soap. The moment you enter, the wall of humidity hits you like a steam towel to the face. Everything smells of lye, rose water, and wet wool. Someone somewhere is whistling off-key, and a stream of bathwater trickles along a carved channel in the floor, heading toward a wide stone basin where 3 women are furiously scrubbing what looked like a ceremonial tablecloth, or maybe a toga. The head eunuch waves toward a corner. You silks and delicates, and don't touch the lavender batch. That's the impresses. You nod, shuffle over to your station, and realize what you're looking at: the emperor's personal wardrobe, or, more specifically, his soiled undergarments. You're not sure what's more offensive, the job itself or the elaborate embroidery along the waistband. You gather the garments, handling them with the kind of exaggerated reverence that says, "I know this is ridiculous, but I don't want to die." The process begins: soaking, rinsing, blotting. You dip the silks in cool water infused with crushed soapwort, then roll them carefully in soft cloth to absorb excess moisture. One of the other launderers, an older woman with arms like oxen, leans over and grins. "First time in the emperor's bloomers." You sigh. "Is it that obvious?" "Don't worry." She chuckles. "They all start there. It's like a rite of passage. Tomorrow you might be trusted with his socks." Somewhere across the room, a younger page is struggling to scrub a crimson robe. A huge blot of something oily has seeped into the fold fish sauce from the smell of it. He's panicking, rubbing furiously, which of course is making it worse. You wander over. "Try ash," you mutter, handing him a little tin of powder. "Dab, don't rub." He stares at you like you just conjured clean linen out of thin air. "Where'd you learn that?" You shrug. "I cleaned a mosaic tile once with vinegar. Same principle." He nods solemnly, like you've just spoken scripture. Laundry in the Byzantine court isn't just about cleaning. It's a performance. The emperor's garments must emerge spotless, fragrant, and so perfectly pressed you could fold them with a compass. Each piece gets sorted by color, fabric, and protocol level. There's even a special towel reserved for imperial hand drying, woven with tiny golden birds. You know this because you're the one who just nearly dropped it in a puddle. The washing itself uses water drawn from palace cisterns, cool, filtered, and laced with mineral salts that keep the fabrics from fading. Soap is a luxury here, some made from goat fat and ash, others imported from Arab merchants in Aleppo, scented with citrus and cedar. You're working with the mid-tier stuff today, slightly gritty, but it gets the job done. Overhead, thick ropes run across the ceiling beams, suspending rows of damp tunics. One robe catches your eye, dyed deep purple and trimmed with what looks like bear fur. You point. "That's not his usual cloak, is it?" The ox-armed woman shrugs. Oh, no. That's ceremonial. Worn once a year, maybe. Gets cleaned anyway, just in case the Holy Spirit drops in unexpectedly." You snort. "He tends to do that. Only if you're not looking busy." One of the quieter eunuchs now enters, carrying a cedar box marked with the imperial seal. He opens it carefully and removes what looks like a handkerchief with a blood stain on the corner. Everyone pauses. An accident. Someone whispers. He doesn't answer. Just hands it off to you. "Great. Blood on white linen." You don't ask questions, you just move to your table. Heat a little pot of salt water and begin the gentle dabbing process. Salt, lemon, cold rinse, repeat. You've heard whispered stories of what happened to the last guy who returned a stained cloth. Something involving the monastery on Patmos and an unfortunate vow of silence. As you work, the conversation around the room continues. Someone's cousin in the outer provinces saw a comet last week. Another swears the chamberlain is hiding food from the kitchen stores. And apparently, the empress's pet monkey has been biting again. The most interesting rumor, though, is whispered near the basin. "Did you hear? The emperor met with a Persian emissary last night. In private. No witnesses. None. Why, who knows? maybe a treaty, maybe a threat, maybe both. You think. Byzantium thrives on mystery. After a few hours, you're wringing out towels and folding linens with aching hands. You're nearly finished when you notice something odd. One of the emperor's robes bears a stitched-in note, almost invisible. Tiny letters embroidered inside the hem. May your enemies kneel. A prayer, a warning, or just one of those weird palace Easter eggs history never explains. Historians still argue whether messages were often stitched into court garments for protection, prophecy, or plain paranoia. You don't know which it is, but you make a mental note to check hems from now on. At last, you're part of the laundry. Cycle ends. The garments are returned to their golden storage chests. The towels folded into pyramid stacks. The ropes relieved of their burden. The eunuch nods at your work. Efficient. No burns. No tears. We'll see you next time someone bleeds on a bedsheet. You mumble a thanks and escape up the stairs, finally breathing in dry air again. You barely make it halfway across the courtyard before you're intercepted again, this time by a garden steward. You, come with me. The empress's bees are angry. You blink. Angry. He nods gravely. Very, and someone has to calm them. Fantastic. You're starting to suspect someone is pulling names from a hat labeled tasks nobody wants. And today, that means bees. Not just any bees, imperial bees, sacred, spoiled, vindictive little buzzers with better living conditions than most palace servants. You follow the garden steward through a side gate, stepping into what might be the most peaceful corner of the palace, at least until the screaming starts. Zoe's garden, a walled sanctuary of carved fountains, whispering pines, winding paths, and scent-drenched flower beds. Peacocks strut here, monks sometimes meditate here, and somewhere in the middle, surrounded by violet, thyme, and a hedgerow trimmed to look like St. Michael, are the hives. The empress, Lady Zoe herself, considers this garden sacred. Legend has it she once claimed the bees told her which incense to burn on Maundy Thursday. Historians still argue whether that was poetic license or early signs of heat stroke. Today, the bees are not whispering gentle suggestions. They are furious. As you approach the central hive enclosure, a stone-walled circle crowned with climbing roses, you hear the telltale hum, loud, tense, like the sound a lion might make if it were very angry and alive. The air vibrates with potential stings. The steward stops suddenly and gestures toward a half-fallen basket of lavender near the hive stand. That's what did it. The new boy tried to sweeten them, upset the scent balance. Sweeten. He fed them crushed figs. You blink. Why? He said they looked hungry. Of course he did. The bees, already disoriented by the foreign sugar, are now flying loops like deranged theologians. One has latched onto a nearby rose and is performing what might be a war dance. You're handed a soft linen veil, a bundle of sage, and a copper bowl of smoking coals. You'll waft. Calmly, the steward says, and don't swat. They remember. You pull the veil over your head and approach the hive slowly. The bees form a halo of movement around you. Some bump against the veil. One lands on your sleeve. You whisper the only prayer you can remember and begin waving the sage smoke gently toward the entrance of the first hive. Within minutes, the tone shifts, the humming lowers. Wings slow. Several bees dive back into their hive entrance. You keep wafting, inhaling the pungent herbal smoke and trying not to flinch every time one brushes your ear. Behind you, the steward mutters, "You've done this before?" No, huh? Natural talent or divine intervention, either way, it works. Within 20 minutes, the swarm has relaxed enough for you to refill their water basin. Move the fig remnants far, far away, and brush the fallen lavender into a compost pile. You stand, arms aching slightly, sweat pooling at your lower back, and realize for once nothing has exploded, been stained, or resulted in emergency confession. You've survived the bees. You pause a moment to breathe in the garden air. Pine, resin, old water, crushed mint, something sugary in the breeze. You let yourself sit briefly on a cool stone bench beneath a pear tree. The birds are chirping again. The bees buzz politely. And in the distance, a musician is rehearsing for tonight's banquet, soft lyre notes drifting like mist. But don't get too comfortable. The steward reappears with a basket and a smile that says more work incoming. Those roses need trimming. The scented ones. She bathes in the petals. You take the shears and start clipping carefully only the pink blossoms, not the red. The red ones are for incense, the pink ones for bathing. Mistake those and you'll be explaining to the court perfumer why the empress smells like death rites, While you work, a palace page darts by on the path, kicking up dust and nearly knocking over a potted laurel. You wave your shears at him in protest. He skids to a stop. Oh, you're the bee person, you sigh. Apparently, come with me. They need you in the banquet hall. You blink. Why? Something about goblets, guests, and goat cheese. You hand off your shears to a nearby monk and jog after him, brushing rose petals off your sleeves. As you pass under an ivy-wrapped arch, you spot a flash of crimson disappearing behind a hedge. A whisper, a hush, to people walking very close, together where they shouldn't be. You don't stop. The palace is full of little secrets that pretend not to exist. By the time you reach the banquet wing, the atmosphere has shifted again, buzzing with anticipation, tension, and the occasional loud sneeze from the spice room. The grand dining hall, with its frescoed walls and endless rows of gold-rimmed platters, is preparing for tonight's imperial feast. You're guided toward the staging area near the main entrance, where a steward is yelling into a curtain. There must be symmetry, left to right, gold to silver, figs to nuts. Who put the blue goblets on the honey table? You straighten your shoulders, walk up, and say what no one dares say. Where do you want me? The steward spins, eyes wild, then softens. Oh good, you've got steady hands. You're arranging the center table. Of course you are. They hand you a tray of marinated olives, pickled eggs, rosewater jellies, and a wheel of goat cheese so perfectly round you hesitate to touch it. The goal, arrange it artistically on a golden charger surrounded by pomegranate seeds. Almond slivers and sugared violets dot. You try your best. The olives roll, the jelly jiggles. The goat cheese refuses to slice cleanly, but eventually you step back and admire your work. A passing court lady stops, arches one eyebrow, and murmurs, whimsical, "You'll take it." The banquet is nearly ready, candles lit, harps tuned, and the emperor is expected shortly. You step away from the table just as the torches are brought in. The steward claps you on the shoulder. Not bad for a bee chaser. You grin out, and just like that, it's evening in the Byzantine palace. The torches flicker now, casting dancing shadows across the gilded walls of the banquet hall. Warm light pools across platters of glistening fruit and polished bronze cups filled to the brim with watered wine, Byzantine style. Of course not, because they can't afford the strong stuff, but because getting inebriated at a state dinner is a diplomatic disaster waiting to happen. You slip quietly into the background, edging near a cluster of musicians tuning their lyres and adjusting their embroidered tunics. The scent of roasted lamb hangs heavy in the air, layered over with clove-studded oranges and simmering cinnamon syrup from the dessert trays. Every corner of the room hums with preparation. Banquets in the palace are not meals, they are messages. From your perch behind the curtain, you peek at the center table. The emperor hasn't arrived yet, but guests are filtering in: ambassadors, court poets, generals in starched robes, and one bishop who's already deep into his second date pastry. The head steward barks instructions like a choir director on the verge of collapse. No crumbs on the gold charger. Move the almond bowl left. No, my left. You duck just in time to avoid a flying fig. You're assigned role tonight. Table shadow. That's not an official title, but it may as well be. You and two others are stationed at the edge of the banquet to refill goblets, swap out soiled napkins, and most importantly, silently intervene before anything dramatic happens. In a room full of minor nobles and major egos, that's a full-time job. You grip the stem of a goblet tray and glance around for early warning signs. A whisper here, a sneer there. That general just stiffened when the poet arrived. That courtier looks a bit too eager for the wine. And oh look, there's a goose leg missing from the main platter. It begins. The emperor enters with zero warning. No trumpet, no shout, just a subtle ripple as every person in the room rises, bows, and lowers their eyes. He moves to the central couch. Clint Styland settles in with the casual authority of someone who knows the room would gladly freeze in place if he willed it. You sneak a look. He wears deep blue robes tonight, stitched with gold and double-headed eagles. His expression is unreadable, imperial mask in place, but his eyes scan the room like a hawk scanning for movement in a field. The banquet begins. Servants sweep in bearing platters, roasted pigeons glazed in pomegranate syrup, salted fish arranged like mosaics, loaves of bread braided with raisins and sage, and a centerpiece of sculpted butter shaped like the Hagia Sophia. You're not sure if you're supposed to admire it or eat it. A musician strums a melody that sounds vaguely Armenian, and the table conversations bloom cautiously. The emperor speaks little, but his occasional nod triggers waves of laughter. This is politics in robes and crumbs. About halfway through the evening, disaster almost strikes. One of the junior wine attendants, barely older, that a choir boy fumbles a goblet while pouring for the Persian ambassador. A splash of wine arcs through the air like a blood-red comet. You react without thinking, one step forward, cloth in hand, catch the edge of the spill midair before it soaks the ambassador's sleeve. The goblet clinks down, a beat of silence, then the ambassador chuckles. Your servants are quick, he says through his beard. The emperor glances at you, just for a second, then speaks for the first time all evening. He's been everywhere today. Oh no, the entire table turns to look at you. Someone laughs, another chuckles. The tension breaks like dry wood, and just like that, you've been noticed. In a good way, probably. You bow awkwardly and fade back into position, heart pounding. The rest of the meal continues without catastrophe. You refill olives, replace spoiled honey tarts, and discreetly intercept the noble who's trying to pocket the silver spoon. Standard stuff. Toward the end, the steward waves you toward the dessert trays. You help carry out the final course: candied melon, date-stuffed pastries, and jellied fruit domes sprinkled with crushed pistachio, the empress's favorite. You catch a rare glimpse of her from across the room, veiled, serene, and watching everything. Her expression is unreadable, but her hand briefly gestures toward the jellied dome. The steward leans in and murmurs something in her ear. She nods, faintly. You hope that's a compliment. As the feast winds down, guests begin to recline more casually. The musicians shift into gentler tunes, longer notes, softer plucks. Conversations drift into whispers, laughter now less performative and more genuine. You move to collect emptied trays, careful not to disturb anyone. And that's when you see them, the figure slipping out a side corridor, robes drawn tight. Not supposed to be there. You recognize the shorter one as a servant from the scriptorium. The taller, not sure, but something about the way they move urgent, careful. Not meant for this scene. It's not your business, but in the palace, everything eventually becomes someone's business. You load the last of the cups onto your tray and carry it down the torch-lit hallway, breath finally beginning to slow. One of the guards nods at you, another yawns. Somewhere, a cat yowls behind the tapestry. Your night isn't over. One last assignment: torch duty. You're sent to help extinguish the corridor lights after the final guests have been seen out. So, here you are, wandering the whispering colonnades with a long brass pole, gently snuffing out flames as the palace settles into hush. One by one, the corridors darken, the laughter fades, the shadows grow long and quiet. You hear a voice, soft, serious, echoing behind a marble screen. You stop. A conversation is happening. One voice is the emperor's, the other, low and unfamiliar. The message from Antioch was clear. They're moving east. A pause. Send no reply yet. The emperor says. You freeze, then silently back away. By the time you reach your quarters, your feet throb, your head spins, and your tunic smells like bees, butter, and pomegranate. The palace has gone quiet. Almost. You wake before sunrise again, because the palace never really sleeps, even now. After last night's banquet and your unexpected cameo in front of a Persian ambassador, your name has probably been whispered down 3 corridors and around 2 kitchens. You're still just a servant, but a Byzantine. Fame spreads like honey over hot bread, quick, sweet, and always a little sticky. You splash your face with cold water from a stone basin, then dress. No fresh tunic, of course. The laundry schedule says Tuesday, and it's not Tuesday. Your legs are sore, your wrists tender from too many goblets, too many jellies, and far too many beastings. You step into the hall, rubbing sleep from your eyes, and find a note tucked under your door. No signature, just 3 words in firm, angular Greek, Chrysotriklinos. Now, quiet, great. Nothing unsettling about that. You head that way, past shadowy colonnades and hushed servants already dusting candelabras. The sun is just rising, bleeding soft gold into the high windows. You pass the outer narthex and catch the smell of incense already wafting from the chapel. Somewhere, a priest is chanting. Somewhere else, a child is crying. And then you arrive. The golden reception hall is empty, silent, cold from the night, but somehow still grand, like it knows how many secrets it's held. A figure stands at the far end, hooded. It's not the emperor, not a priest, not a guard. It's the eunuch, that eunuch, the smug one from the scriptorium with the impossible eyebrows and the knack for showing up at just the wrong time. He turns slowly and walks toward you, then hands you a scroll. Congratulations, he says dryly. You've survived a banquet, a bee uprising, and whatever that was with the wine. You blink. This isn't a punishment scroll, is it? Not today. You open it. It's a new assignment. Higher. Quarters. Closer to the Emperor's ceremonial circle. Fewer dishes, more documents. Not quite a promotion, but it smells like one. You glance up. Why me? He shrugs. Some people break things. You mop them up. That's valuable. You want to say something clever, but instead you nod, because in a place like this, survival is the highest compliment. As he walks away, you catch a glint in his sleeve ink stain, just barely visible. So he is the one who borrowed that scroll. You almost smile. You exit through a side passage, out into one of the upper gardens where no one expects you for the next 15 minutes. A breeze carries the scent of crushed myrtle and dew. You sit on a marble bench beneath the mosaic of St. George and let your limbs melt. The city lies below you, stretching past the palace gates to the sea rooftops, domes. Tiny chimney trails curling up into the pale sky. You hear footsteps. Again, you brace. But it's not trouble this time. It's the bread boy from yesterday, handing you half a warm roll and a nod. Fig jam today, the good kind. You tear off a piece and pop it in your mouth. Warm, sweet, slightly spiced. Your stomach sings. And just like that, the palace becomes human again. You sit in silence, and as the golden sun lifts higher, the palace stirs once more. Fires lit, floors swept, scripts copied, birds fed, beasts soothed, peacocks placated, and you're ready. Another day in Byzantium. Word count 180. Wind down 300 words. The marble under your fingers cools as morning deepens, and the sounds of the waking palace begin to slow instead of build. You've made it through fire and figs, bees and bronze, rumors and robes, and not once did the empire collapse around you. That's no small feat. You close your eyes for a moment, leaning your head back against sun-warmed stone. The voices grow more distant. The air softens. The gold-threaded chaos of the court fades into a gentle hum. All the torches have gone out. The tables are empty. The scrolls are resting in their quiet cabinets. Far off, somewhere in the city, a bell tolls the hour. Not loudly, just enough to remind you that time moves on even in a place that seems frozen in ritual and shimmer. You draw a long, deep breath. Feel the weight of silk, the whisper of smoke, the echo of sandals on mosaics all melting into the background of your mind. Let it go. No more robes to fold. No more torches to snuff. No more bees to dodge. Just peace. Just quiet. Let your thoughts slow now. Let the corridors stretch into shadow. Let the candlelight flicker behind your eyes, and let yourself rest here, inside the golden heart of an empire, where even the walls are tired, and even the saints in the mosaic seem ready to close their eyes. Good night, my friend. Rest well. End of script. Sweet dreams.